All right, good evening, and thanks for joining us. It's Conversations with Mary Ann Okon. I am Mary Ann Okon. I'm a broadcast journalist reporting live from Lagos, Nigeria. And of course, on this program, we talk about everything, and we talk about politics, current affairs, health, insecurity, everything. And we don't just talk about issues relating to Nigeria, we talk about issues relating to Africa. Today, we're going to still be talking about the issue of insecurity in Nigeria now. Last week, Friday, we did talk about insecurity, and we dwelled mostly on what happened in Borno State, where over 100 farmers were killed in cold blood on their rice farms. And as of last week, there's still been a disparity in the numbers because the government of Nigeria is saying that there were just 43 farmers, while the international community is saying it was 110. That still being the case, just over the weekend, 600 students were abducted from an all-boys school in Katsina State. And for those of you who do not know, Katsina State is the home state of Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari. And also worthy of note is that Mr. President was in his hometown, Daura, on the said day when this happened. Now, there have been reactions trailing, the fact that these young boys were kidnapped right under the nose of Mr. President. But is Mr. President the head of the DSS? Is he the head of the Nigerian Army? Is he a police officer? Well, he's a retired general, but that doesn't mean that the job of security lies solely on his shoulder. And that's me just playing the devil's advocate. Well, there have been reactions from the religious communities. There have been reactions from the Northern elders. There have been reactions from all across the country. And now the reason why these reactions are so heavy, for those who are watching from outside Nigeria, is because Nigeria has been experiencing pockets of violence and insecurity across the regions. And for those who've been following our conversations last week, we did talk about, peaceful places like Cross River and Akwa Ibom now experiencing some form of cult clashes, unrest, kidnappings. And now the Niger Delta militants don't want to be left out of, the show. They're also saying, look, we're here, we're ready, whatever, it's about to start. So, like I said, wherever you look or you turn, you would always see a pocket of violence. So as we speak, right after the NSAS protest that led to a probe, which is still ongoing, there's been a committee that has been set up to listen, a panel to listen to people who have been wronged by several police officers, people who say they have complaints against SARS officers. The panels are still listening to them. Now, don't forget that the presidency had also called reports filed by CNN false, and reports that are capable of dividing the country. Let's also not forget that recently we heard that the number of boys that were taken from their classrooms that day are not up to 600. The federal government is saying it's not that amount. So we see some kind of, a repetitive attitude of sorts, where there's a downplay of numbers. There's they said and we said, no, what you're saying is wrong. You're trying to make our country look bad. But the most important thing that is being missed out of all of this conversation is that the people who are dead, the people who have lost their lives, people who will not live to see another day, are the list of the problems of the country as we speak. Now, let's take, for example, the United States of America. We're always making reference to the US. If a person dies, or let's say 6 people die because, what do they call them? ISIS, decides to hit, let's say, God forbid, Texas, and 6 people die. Do you think that they would be trading blames? Do you think they would be thinking about the numbers, how to reduce the numbers so that people don't feel bad about the numbers? Or do you think that the presidency would be talking tough and dealing immediately with the situation? Well, that's the difference between Nigeria and the United States. Well, I'm not going to be talking alone because I have a guest. My guest is he's an educationist, he's an author, he's a commentator on social and political issues. I've known him from my days when I was on the radio, and right now he's back in the scene. He's promoting his new book, but we're not going to be talking about his book today. We're going to be talking about the insecurity in Nigeria. Ikechi Nwobu, it's so good to have you join us. I know the battle that we fought before we had you on 3P. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Miriam.
Yeah, so Ikechi, I know that you and I have been doing a lot of banter back, commenting on the situation in the country. Now, even before the boys were taken, we were talking about the fact that Mr. President has not necessarily spoken about this situation. Mr. President has not given the kind of action that Nigerians are expecting. And then boom, this happens over the weekend. Let's start with that. We've had the Chibok girls, where so many girls from a federal government girls' college were taken. And several years down the line, we don't even know how many girls are still there who or those who have become, suicide bombers, or those who have become brides of these terrorists. And then again, we had the issue of the Dapchi students who were also taken in the same kind of way. I mean, it was like a copycat kind of thing. And these number of students passed all of the checkpoints. For those who live in Nigeria, Ikechi, I'm sure if we're traveling from Port Harcourt to, let's say, Lagos, you would pass at least 1,000 checkpoints. And I'm sure that this is ditto for every state in this country. You will pass checkpoints. So people question the fact that these number of students were taken when it was the Chibok girls, when it was Dapchi, and now we have these boys in Kankara. How could they take 600 students and they passed all of those checkpoints? So what does this say about the security apparatus in this country? Let's start from there.
Well, it's heartbreaking, because just a couple of weeks back, I was conversing with some of my friends, and they pointed out that the Nigerian military is known as, I think, the third best force in the world. Okay, and it was an argument. No, we're not that good. Yes, we're good. In fact, we're better than that. Okay, so I said, who's the first? They said, well, you have the US, maybe let's say the US, China, and then Nigeria. I said, no, that's not possible. So it was a debate. It was a debate as to the strength of the Nigerian forces, the strength of the Nigerian military. So whether they are best in Africa or they are best in West Africa or Sub-Saharan, whatever, what is important is the Nigerian military is not a pushover force. They are worth their onions. But of recent, there seems to be too much of a political play in the military. I mean, the refusal of the presidency to lay off some retired servicemen, service chiefs, just for some maybe nepotistic or pecuniary or whatever benefit that is. And so we seem not to be having the full story right now, and so nobody's sure. You hear anything, the papers are not publishing the truth, because everyone seems to be gagged in Nigeria. You say the truth, they come after you. And so for the most part, we're fed with a lot of lies, and it leaves us unsure. But what is sure in all of this is that citizens are dying. Okay, Nigeria is fast becoming the world's biggest death zone. Okay, we're fast becoming probably next to the gas chamber in Poland and all that, where 6 million Jews were killed. We're becoming the next death zone, and everywhere is unsafe. And it's because we're not being told the truth. So at one end, we're told that someone is designing all of this. It's a political power play to hold on to power. At another end, we're hearing from some sources again that there's a redesigning of what happened in Niger Delta. So you had the attention at some point at the Niger Delta, and then the creation of intervention schemes like the NDDC. So right now you're replicating same in the north, in the northeast, the northwest, okay, where you will have to create an NEDC or NWDC and all of that. And so one begins to wonder, why this? Why should we go on with this? This is money that should be meant for developing the country. And then at another end, you have the military decrying poor infrastructure, poor weaponry. And then you keep hearing that there are some shipments coming in from here and there, or the US doesn't trust the Nigerian military, the UK doesn't trust the Nigerian military, and all of that. So we really don't know what to believe anymore. But a lot is wrong. A lot is wrong. And for starters, I think everyone at the helm of affairs needs to come out with some truth as to whether they are failing really, or they need some better thoughts, some better strategies, some better thinking to defeating this war against terror. But then the terrorists seem to be on the increase. So at some point we had just the Boko Haram. Okay, then we had the bandits. Sorry, we had the Fulani criminals. I don't want to call them the Fulani herdsmen because we've always had herdsmen. Then you had the criminals, okay, in the name of herdsmen, and then now you have bandits. So they have not also addressed the Niger Delta case. So we still have the militants showing up every once in a while, making statements, and nobody gets arrested. Nobody gets arrested. It's alarming, and you know, it's a known fact that when punishment is not brought up for crime, okay, then everyone wants to be a criminal. So that's the state where we are in today in Nigeria.
Okay, Ikechi, for those who are watching us, I would like to just give them a picture of, you know, what exactly happened in Kankara, and when we come back, would discuss. Now, this video is from France 24. They did a little background. They gave us a little background into what happened and what transpired in that school. And then when we come back, we'll talk more about, you know, intelligence gathering on our path. We'll be right back.
This is the Nigerian school that became the scene of a fierce gun battle. Eyewitnesses said that gunmen armed with AK-47s arrived on motorcycles and stormed the secondary school on Friday just before 10 p.m. Police officers opened fire on the gunmen, allowing some students to flee. But local residents said that hundreds were unaccounted for and may have been kidnapped.
‘Ya'yanmu da aka ɗauke a cikin makarantar nan akwai ƙanina wanda muke uwa ɗaya uba ɗaya, akwai ɗana wanda na haifa a cikin makarantar. Mu da ke cikin garin Kankara tun karfe 10 da banmu da bacci har gari ya waye. Ai muna shiga da bindiga kuma an kwashi ‘ya'yan danginmu ko da ba an ɗauki ‘yan uwata.
The attack happened in Kankara, a town in the northwestern state of Katsina. It's a state plagued by violence that the government blames on bandits who kidnap for ransom. Back in August, gunmen kidnapped 7 students and their teacher from a private school in a neighbouring state. They were later released, but it's unclear if a ransom was paid.
So yeah, that's the video from France 24, giving us a background as to what happened in that all-boys school, by the way. It's a federal government college. And I do not know, Ikechi, why they target these federal government colleges. But according to the statement and audio recording that was put up by Boko Haram, they did say that the boys were being taught something that was contrary to the holy teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. And today I spent time asking some of my Muslim friends if the Islamic religion is really against education, whether it's Western, whether it's formal or informal education, is Islam against it? And they said no, that if there's anything that Islam is in support of, it's education. So again, this makes us wonder really what Boko Haram is up to, yes, again, with these boys. And let's not forget, these may become child soldiers. A young boy told some of our pressmen that, you know, he was able to escape from the hands of these guys. But there have been so many reactions. You know, first is that the presidency was playing down on the numbers. Every time there's an attack, the presidency is quick to, you know, say, no, this is not the number. It's actually lower. So I'm trying to understand exactly why the presidency takes this route. I know that you, Ikechi, you've been talking about issues like this, but why do you think it's a strategy to douse tension? Is it the best way to go in handling issues of terrorism, or is it just the default, you know, position of the presidency under Muhammad Buhari?
Well, unfortunately, it seems like a global trend. Most of the time, you hear of things like this in the news, either deaths or something. The government at play would want to always tone down the numbers so they don't seem too weak, right? So it's just something that is known out there. If it is for something good, then it could be exaggerated. So it's a slap, like Wole Soyinka said, Professor Wole Soyinka, it's a slap in their face that such huge numbers of boys, like you asked a little while ago, 600 boys. Were there no checkpoints? Were there no men on duty? I mean, what was the coverage distance from the location of their school to wherever it is they are right now? 600 is a huge crowd. It's like an entire wedding party. Okay, just carried. Was it at night? Was it at day? Did they get into vehicles? How long was their drive? Did they walk? These are questions that should be asked. Are there no satellite coverages? I mean, even with Google Earth, okay, you can go back and replay and see what is going on. And it's unfortunate that all of this is happening, and which is why it clearly points to a conspiracy. It's a script that has been written and someone is not telling us the truth. And I see no reason why the federal government should be helpless at these times, because like you pointed out earlier as well, these are human beings. Every day we hear news of death, every day we hear news of terror. It means that in Nigeria practically no one is safe, because it has happened one time too many. It happened with the Chibok girls. Okay, up till date, we still have the Bring Back Our Girls campaigners getting to the Unity Fountain in Abuja every now and then. Then we had the Dapchi school girls abducted, and those ones, it seemed as though they were abducted for mockery and then for early child marriages. Okay, now you have boys. So what is the essence of kidnapping boys? The reason why they would want to go to the Unity schools is because they are sure that Unity schools are somewhat like a cream of the most organized schools in country, and they are sure that in those parts the boys will be there. They are trying to meet up with a calendar that doesn't run just around the north, but it's a national calendar. So they are sure, and they are sure of the numbers. So you could account for boys in such huge thousands or hundreds and all that. So they were clear, 600 boys. I don't know how many escaped. I don't know how many of them were day students, but they could harvest 600 boys. And the plan now, will it be to marry them off? No. Is it because, like Boko Haram is saying, that they're doing something wrong? No. So they are just fundamentalists. They're just extremists trying to become enemies of state. And over and again, they want to show the federal government of Nigeria how porous their security systems are. And if this happens, my fear, like I said earlier, is no one is safe. They could come to anyone. I fear the president has to be careful, because this happened right under his nose while he was holidaying for just a week in Katsina State. And so the question comes, what if he was actually picked up? Because he's our president and it should be a concern for all Nigerians. Okay, if the first citizen is right there in Daura, okay, for a week or a private visit to Daura, and right there in Katsina State, 600 boys are abducted. Okay, it will take them a while to get out of Daura. So they're either abducted towards the north or towards the south or towards the east or towards the west. There should be some movement, some daring. Okay, how far has the abduction scenario been from where the president was? So what if the same terrorists with the same weaponry, who could have obstructed or overcome whatever security defense system, okay, what if they had gone in the direction of where the president was lodged? That's the question. It's a national concern, okay, right now. Could they not have overcome or discomfited the military presence at the president's lodge? And we could have been hearing something else. And tell you what, these are imaginations, crazy imaginations, untamed imaginations. And someone would want to give a go at it someday. And we just pray it doesn't happen. But it's no better time to call on the leadership of Nigeria to wake up and smell the coffee, because the numbers that are being recruited, in addition to the numbers that are present, okay, and if on and on nothing is done to address the case of insecurity, I just imagine a day where they'll take over Aso Rock, and you can imagine what that points to. And it's really not equal. I mean, all the politics we play around security is absolutely unnecessary. It's time to sit down for the top brass of the military to sit down and begin to strategize on ways forward to overcome this. They should stop the nonsense of, oh, it's difficult and all that. They can do it.
All right, Ikechi, talking about ways, strategizing, this should be the very first thing, because I think I was having a conversation somewhere. I think I was at the hospital and I was having a conversation, and I kept saying, we don't have to be reactionary. We've had Boko Haram here for over a decade. Shouldn't we at least be 10 steps ahead, if not 5? You know, should we still be behind, and everything, or every time they hit, it comes to us as a shock? Because every time the president responds to these kidnappings or killings or shootouts by terrorists, he's always expressing shock. And for us, this is not what we're looking out for. Again, I want to say, Mr. President is not the head, he's not the chief of army staff, neither is he the head of the police or the joint task force. But of course, there should be a strategy of sorts. Talking about strategy, while parents, teachers, and people who live around that school in Kankara were, crying and screaming and calling for the head of the president, well, I want everybody's eyes to be on the screen. Let me tell you a little bit about what the president was doing, as at the time where people were calling for Mr. President's head, people were screaming blue murder and saying, enough is enough, there's too much bloodletting. The president was in his state, but he didn't show up to that school. He didn't go to the school. He sent a representative, and people felt that he should have given it a human face, at least because it happened in his backyard. They were hoping that he would show up. But there is a video that surfaced by Sahara reporters, and this is what the president was doing while people were crying and looking for their children. Let's take a look. So for those who are wondering what's happening in that video, Mr. President went to visit cows in Daura, but then human lives were wasted, human lives were taken, a few young people were saved, but the president was about his business. He did indeed say he was on a private visit. But what is more important than 600 schoolboys taken by terrorists? I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, Ikechi.
Yeah, there was some reaction in the news earlier today, saying, look, calling out to him, are the cows more important? Like, he seems so relaxed over these issues, and for me, it's a thing of concern. It's a thing of concern. Like earlier, you were asking about strategy. It's so sad that it always seems like the Nigerian leadership comes behind the pack in almost every case. Like, we seem not to be prepared for anything. Okay, we always seem to be in shock. We always seem to be taken aback. We always seem to be overwhelmed. And for me, it's poor leadership. It's poor leadership. It's poor leadership formation. I think we've had, like, okay, when the Boko Haram struck the first time with the abduction of such numbers of the Chibok girls, I think it would have been time for the military brass to sit down and begin to work around it. But what you see rather is a situation where you have them come on air to say, we're coming to pick up Boko Haram tomorrow. And even if fool get prepared and change location, they say that these ones are in the Sambisa forest and there has been a war going on. They said, oh, they know where the girls are hidden. Okay, it's over since 2014. It's over 6 years now. We have not found the girls in official sense. Okay, and now we have this. Okay, so the problem is now you have heard over time from the news, eyewitness reports have indicated that they see helicopters providing supplies at the Sambisa forest, probably to the Boko Haram boys. Who owns these helicopters? In 6 years, would have expected some form of investigation, some findings to say this is it, this is the source and all that. In the recent times in the news, we have heard names of political bigwigs fingered. We have heard politicians, we have heard activists say Boko Haram is sponsored by politicians. Politicians from where? Who are these people? What are their names? And it makes us a mockery before the nations, because if in 6 years, in 10 years, we can pinpoint to the entire design of the Boko Haram criminal strategy, then it's sad. And the criminals are only taking advantage of the loopholes, because it seems always as though we have weaklings in leadership. We have people who don't even have any business with the business of leadership in leadership. So what are they doing there? There have been no sacks. I remember a case when the president instructed the police chief to go to a certain location, and the police chief did not go to that location, and nothing happened to him. Okay, so the citizens keep calling out to these people, calling for their heads, but the presidency seems better interested in other things than in the protection of lives and property of Nigerian citizens, and that's what makes it worse. It's worse for us because we are just dwelling in uncertain times. Okay, it could be anybody, it could be everybody. We don't even know what next strategy, and the criminals are having a field day. I mean, even before they became ISWAP, right? Even before they married with the IS boys, now it's like, okay, there is a combination of Boko Haram and IS West Africa, and one day we don't pray for the worst, but it's unsure. I mean, anyone could be picked up for ransom, anyone, and it's a sad day. It's a sad day for Nigeria.
Talking about them having a field day, of course, the northern part of the country is experiencing, its fair share of terrorism, and I mean it differs. There's banditry, there's the ISWAP and Boko Haram in the northeast. You come down to Kaduna State, they tell you that they're herdsmen, killing people. I mean, they have all kinds of names. They've been given all kinds of names. But let's bring it down south and the Middle Belt, and even in Lagos. Yesterday, I was speaking to someone, and they said it's no longer safe to go out when it's dark in Calabar. It's no longer safe to go out in certain parts of the country because police officers are not on duty. They're not necessarily working. You can't call anybody. Who are you going to call if somebody's breaking down your wall and trying to rob you? So people really are not in a festive mood right now, because everywhere you turn, you're either being kidnapped, you're being robbed, or somebody's trying to kill you. So how long is Mr. President going to keep quiet about this issue? Because that's the thing. He's been keeping mute. And recently, a Methodist prelate who seemed to be pretty livid, and like I said earlier on, the clerics, whether the Muslim clerics, whether the Christian clerics, they're all saying, we need you to sack your service chiefs. If something like this were to happen in a saner climate, heads will roll. What do the service chiefs? I'm asking. I don't suppose you know, but maybe you have some intel that we probably don't know. What do these service chiefs have on Mr. President? Because some of them are actually due for retirement, but the president has totally blatantly refused to sack these guys. Is he trying to tell us that in the whole Nigerian army, the Navy, the Air Force, there are no competent people who can replace these service chiefs who are still serving and have gone past their service year?
They have numbers of smart guys in the military, but like we have always been told, it's political play. It's political play. Well, at some point, the service chiefs will be expected to retire, and they'll be replaced with the next in ranks. And you can't tell me that these ones are not overdue. I mean, there was some point when the chief of army staff was fingered for some fraud. What did the president say? Nothing. Okay, and then this is a clear case of ineffectiveness. The chief of army staff just turned 60, just celebrated his 60th birthday, and there were accolades and stuff. Okay, I don't know how many more months he has before he retires and all that. But every day you get all sorts of defense information, lending credence to the efforts the army is making. Absolutely, the army is making great effort. But you know, Nigerians will not be satisfied with just efforts. I mean, the efforts should be punchy. It's like in the boxing scenario, the punches must connect. Otherwise, you will just end up swinging arms. Monies are being spent every day. The budgets are growing. Security votes on the increase, and we're not seeing the results. It seems as though the more the security votes, the lesser the effect of the security impact on the citizenry, and so it's I mean, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. So why is the president leaving them there? Politics. He has some personal interests that he really needs to come out straight with. Right now, the military leadership is seeming somewhat like they are untouchable. Okay, and that's it. So they can do anything. They are good, they stay. They are bad, they stay. There have been many calls. There have been calls for the president to resign in other parts of the world. If a leader finds himself inadequate, he resigns. But look at the presidency. When they make statements, I doubt that any strong supporter of the president would want him to resign. In a case like Nigeria, even if it's a vegetable, even if it's an ordinary stick out there representing an interest, that interest must stay and run through his term. Okay, in saner climes, there's the competition for performance. Everyone wants to perform so he can be returned and so his party stays in power. But in Nigeria, the party will stay in power irrespective. And it's such a primitive scenario that we will keep enjoying support irrespective of how ineffective we are, because we come from a certain tribe, because we come from a certain region. Oh, it's our turn, and so whatever is fielded, okay, we'll just have to sit in that seat as others have done for 8 years and all of that, irrespective of performance. There is no proper appraisal system, and so we can't expect the best of governance ever in Nigeria until these trends change, which is why now the president is in power. He has to get his voice. He has to get those who would protect his personal interests over national interests. And that's where we're having the challenge. Okay, so national interest doesn't come into the order of things anymore. It's personal interest until he is done. Then the new president, probably coming from any other extraction, will get his own team, okay, who will protect his own personal interest. And it always seems to be a play of personal interests over national interests. And that's the biggest problem we'll always have.
But my question, when issues like this are discussed, or the politicizing of security and of lives and property comes up, I always ask, where do we come in? In all of these conversations, where does the life of the Nigerian come in? Where are we fitted? Because it's like we're not prioritized, we're thrown to the back seat. As we speak, we have food insecurity, whether we believe it or not. As we speak right now, we also have general insecurity in our states across the country. As we speak, we're facing some form of poverty. There are job cuts. People no longer have jobs. I was listening to a report this morning on the radio, and a woman was saying before she could feed her kids at least twice a day. Now, that same money, she goes to the market, she can only afford to feed her kids once a day. So things are not even getting better. And so for every time that, there's poverty and it's, the cost of living is rising high, of course, crime and criminality will also be on the increase. But as we speak, the guys who are in charge, or supposedly in charge of protecting lives and property and policing the states within the country, are on some form of a leave of absence, which has never been heard of anywhere in the world. So
did you hear the statement? Did you hear the statement? Was it the Minister of Defense or Minister of Defense or National Security Advisor? One of them made a statement over within this week or over the weekend, comparing security in Buhari's regime with security in Jonathan's regime. And it was really nauseating. Yeah, he said security is better now than it was then. And for me, I quickly reacted on Twitter and I was like, this is not the issue, sir. Okay, there is insecurity. The president swore to 3 things I mean, when he crumbled his entire 82, 83 item campaign promise list to a list of three things. He looked at security as a priority. He looked at the economy as a priority, and he looked at anti-corruption as a priority. And on the scale of 1 to 100, you see that everything is not even up to 10. The economy is going down every day. Now, you could blame that on the COVID-19, but COVID-19 just came in this year. Okay, and so what was happening last year? The economy was bad. The economy was bad in 2017. It was bad in 2018. So earlier they blamed it on the past administration, and then we said, okay, let's create time to fix these things. Okay, now we gave them time to fix these things, and now they are blaming it on COVID. So there's always something to blame. Who knows what will be blamed next? And Nigeria is in the second recession in this administration for the first time in history, and also the most terrible. They told us to prepare for the worst times, the most recession ever in the history of Nigeria. So the economy is doing very poorly, and there seems not to be that strategy map to pull the economy out of this. Now you talk of farming. Agric was the preferred option outside oil when they talked about diversification, and now 43 whole farmers are killed, rice farmers. Rice is a staple food, and you said, let's stop the importation of rice, let's grow rice locally, and now local farmers are coming out, okay, and now they are killed. In the south, yam farmers, cassava farmers are being raped in the farmlands, especially where it is more of female farmers than not. Okay, in the middle belt, you have the Fulani men, the herders going in with their cattle and destroying property, destroying farmlands worth millions of naira, and nobody is saying anything. There are no arrests. So how can the economy be boosted? How can young people be encouraged to get into the farmlands and produce food? How can there not be food scarcity when nothing is being done to create these things? Okay, so monies are being released, fertilizers and all that. So when you invest the monies and the fertilizers in the farmlands, and then the herdsmen come in with their cattle and they consume all of these things, what next? What next formula? You look at graphs every day, you hear stories. Just today, some young men were bantering in the office. We got the news that the World Bank had just released about 1.5 billion naira to the federal government, or at the federal government's request. And someone just said, now they've got money to settle the bandits and release the 600 boys. So there is no trust for government anymore. Even when loans are requested from international donors, nobody wants the loans to be issued, really, to be granted to the federal government, because it seems as though there is a high sense of exuberance when it comes to expenditure and money management. The monies are not invested properly in the economy, and we really do not see the results in the economy in terms of economic growth. So we're not going in any direction. We're not going forward, we're not going backward. We're just staying right where we are and making all sorts of political noise, and we really don't care that people are dying, people are suffering, and monies are being carted away and sent to safe havens in other parts of the world, and nothing. The dollar, the exchange rate, there's a free fall. Okay, there are predictions that between now and the end of December, it may get to 800 to $1, it may get to 1,000 to $1. So you begin to wonder, which way Nigeria? Which way Nigeria?
It's interesting that you asked that question, because I was about to ask. And for those who are watching us, please feel free to post your comments. We are live on Facebook, we're live on Twitter. How safe do you feel in Nigeria right now? I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't go out when it's late anymore, because, I'm not sure that, I could call a police officer and he would come to my aid. So how safe do you feel in Nigeria? If you live in Nigeria, you don't have to be Nigerian. If you live here, how safe do you feel? We want to hear your thoughts. And again, what is the way forward? Do you see the presidency changing its route, or the normal default position that it takes when these kind of things happen? Because it's either they're downplaying the figures, or the president just says something on Twitter and that's it. There's not really any reactionary hit to either these so-called bandits or terrorists or herdsmen. I mean, we just see a one-liner reaction, or the vice president comes on camera and says, I feel sorry for the families. It's a bad day. And that's it. Is that going to be enough for us? How many of us have to fall by the hands of these men for our governments to sit up? This is my question to everyone who's watching and everyone who's participating in the comment section. I want to hear from you, whether you're from Nigeria or you're not from Nigeria. What do you think the government needs to do in collaboration with our security agencies to deal with this situation once and for all? We can't keep, going around in circles and politicizing the safety of people. But Ikechi, my last question before we wrap up this conversation.
Okay.
Same question I asked to everybody. How long or how many more of us and our children will have to fall to the hands of kidnappers and herders and abductors and terrorists? Don't forget, the Niger Delta militants recently put out a statement saying, we do not like how much the budget cost, and we are going to fight against it. In other words, they're itching to do something. They want to do something, and that way, it means that the Niger Delta is also going to be experiencing its fair share of insecurity, something worse than what's happening already. So where do we go from here?
Well, I think at this point, we have seen that there's a collapse of leadership in Nigeria. Leadership seems not to be clear on their mission in power. So it comes to a case of settlement. Someone somewhere is being settled. It's his turn. It's the turn of this region. And so we may not expect any sense of strategic leadership growth or leadership performance for a long time until one thing is done. I think we need to simply get more pointed in our criticisms. Okay, so we shouldn't just say what you're doing is bad. We should say this is what you can do differently. And I'm happy from November, sequel to the NSAS protests and the Lekki massacre and all that, parcels and parcels of Nigerians everywhere are beginning to converse. They are beginning to chart ways forward. I don't know how far these will go, but they are beginning to get them in the books. They are beginning to say, okay, these are the suggestions we're making in view of this thought, this thought. So in terms of security, Nigerians are saying we can create lofty heights in security. Nigeria can actually be the best in security in the world, and this is how.
I'm sorry to cut in, Ikechi. I'm really sorry to do this, but Nigerians are saying, but are they listening? Are they taking, and will they do? Because, I mean, it's like pouring water in the back of a chicken. If you're saying the same thing over and over again, but, somebody just wakes up and does what he wants to do or what he has in mind to do, that necessarily does not help our situation. What's the essence of saying continuously?
It's a beautiful question you just asked, because we are our own problem. We are our own problem. I mean, looking at the current administration, for example, they performed in a way in the first term. So what if they performed good? If they performed very well, then they should have enjoyed our votes. If they performed badly, then they should have been kicked out. So we're not even sure, because the masses are waiting for 2023. And in 2023, some big politicians who have carted away with millions of our Commonwealth will come get the monies out in our faces again, and they will keep spreading them 500 naira, 1,000 naira, 5,000 naira, vote buying, and we will vote them again. So, but then there's a lot of voter education that is required, and we implore every well-meaning individual to come on board, okay, and save the nation with orientation schemes, with public enlightenment program, because in truth, Nigerian voters do not have a proper understanding of what politics entails. And so that is why they just vote anybody they like, anybody who looks handsome, anybody who looks nice, anybody who seems to blab a little more than the others. And so they really do not understand the way politics is done, the politics of results. So I think well-meaning individuals could start with one person. If I could reach out to one person, sit him down and talk to him about politics, then in 3 years, there could be some hope. Even though that is still difficult. I had a funny case ahead of the 2015 elections, where I sat some people down and asked them, what candidate are you voting for? And they told me, I asked them, why this candidate, why that candidate? And nobody could explain. These were graduates. These were enlightened men and women. And I began to educate them. At the end of the day, most of them took a better decision, you could tell, right? But there were some of them who had taken a decision for a yes, and then they went behind, they went to vote, and then they were given some 500 naira, and they changed their mind. So there isn't a clear understanding of voting. Okay, so for this, until this is addressed, then politicians will just keep taking advantage of the ignorance. So it becomes a power share from one big man to another big man. Never people who have the right kinds of ideas for leadership.
One last question. I promise this question, I just want you to quickly answer it. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I have to.
Okay.
It's just a follow-up. If we learn, when is a product of time, if is probability. Now, 2023 is not that close, but it is close. What lessons are we really learning? Do we really learn from the past? And when I'm talking about learning, I'm talking about when it comes to bad leadership. I'm talking about in terms of the security apparatus in this country, the army. We've had the same type of abductions happen over and over again. Do we really learn in this country, or are we really, like some people say, maybe we're doomed? Who did this to us? You know, that thing that we say in local parlance, who did it to us? Really, have we learned from the past? And if we have learned, when are we going to put what we've learned to action? Do we wait till 2023, or is it not best to start now? I don't know.
Before you ask, do we learn, we'll first ask, who is the teacher? So where there is no teacher, there cannot be.
Isn't that supposed to be experience? They say experience teaches you the most, isn't it?
You know, you can only account for how much you have garnered from experience as an individual, not as a people. Okay, so how many of these individuals have actually learned? Because you'll be amazed on election day what people do, especially people you think should be aware, should be more politically aware than others. Of course, most of the elites just sit down in their houses and do nothing because they feel the votes won't count. So to say that people are learning in Nigeria, the answer is not very clear. We seem not to be learning, but there was some hope rising in October when the young people said, look, enough is enough, we're going to do this. And then to some extent, it seemed like they were not learning when they were saying, no, let's float a political party, or let's do this. That is not the answer to the problem. The answer is not even about young people taking the reins of power. The answer is strategy. The answer is how. The answer is way forward. And that would not come in one day. It would require parcels of young persons to sit down and converse. So we should be working towards a private conversation, a private confab of sorts. We should be heading colloquiums, okay, that would get us sitting down and really conversing point by point, okay, conversing richly, and then holding on to those strategies. Like, for example, I'll promote an appraiser. How do we appraise these people? So if we appraise them and they score, let's say there's an appraisal document, for example, and they score well on the marks, that it's simple. We vote them in. So all the politicians who are going to be contesting in the 2023 elections, do they have antecedents? What are they? Or they are coming from the views. Someone is coming in from the diaspora and is saying, I'm going to build 2 million hospitals in 1 week. Is that possible? We're not asking these questions. So that seems as though we're not learning. But when we begin to learn, okay, you'll see embarrassments, you'll see voter walkouts, you'll see a lot of cases where people come to campaign and people say, I don't understand, it doesn't add up, and they're walking away because people are getting to converse a lot more. And so that is the readiness map. Between now and 2022, 2023, we should begin to educate ourselves on how to create a readiness map in every state, in every LGA, across the country, irrespective of party affiliations. We shouldn't vote based on party interests. We should vote based on ideas and ideals. Everyone who's standing out to be voted for has had a past. Who was he in his past? Who does he pretend to be in the eyes of vision? Does he have a vision? Does he have a way forward for tomorrow beyond the blah, 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 beyond the talk party, beyond the talk shop? We want real answers. Is he showing working in his near space, in his locality? What is he doing? Or is it when it's time for Christmas, then they bring out bags of rice and wrapper and give to everyone? When it's time for elections, they kill goats and cows. That's not. We should grow above those levels and come to the reality of intellectualism, intellectual engagement, which requires planning. So if the young people, like you've been seeing tweets posting here and there, people say we're waiting for them in 2023. How well can we account for the waiting for them theory, because amazingly, the same way they divided the ranks among the young people, they will come in again with some money, believing every man has got his price, and if they can buy over one youth, one prominent youth, they'll buy over a second. They have their way, but we should at some point learn to say no. When we learn to say no and we stubbornly hold on to our no with objectivity, then they'll know that we're not in for the usual game. It's not business as usual.
Well, I mean, I don't know any better way to wrap up this conversation, but quickly, let me just run through some of the messages that have been coming in. Pablo sent us a message. Thank you, Pablo. Matt Goldman joining us from Los Angeles. Brett Walker. Hello, Brett. Mercy Boko joined us from Calabar. I see Israel the Minstrel saying hello. I think Israel is from Facebook. I see a message from Quicksilver. Thank you, Quicksilver. Mark Goldman, again, thank you very much. Somebody here says Nigeria always has some crazy news lately. Another person here says Buhari will not help. This is from Takula. Well, I mean, I'm still asking the question, and this video is going to be on Facebook. It's going to be on Twitter. Keep reposting it. How safe do you feel in Nigeria? I don't know how safe you feel, because everywhere we turn, there seems to be one form of insecurity. But how long will we keep quiet about this? For me, I'm going to keep having those conversations. I'm going to keep talking about it. Ikechi, of course, on the other hand, will keep having those conversations on Twitter, on the radio. We can't relent now. We can't stop talking. As much as we're talking, I keep asking, how many of us have our voter cards? Let's even start there. How many people have voters cards? And I'm not talking about people who just turned 18. I'm talking about people who are my age and your age, Ikechi. How many people are willing to go out to the polls on election day to cast their votes and not ask for money? How many Nigerians can willfully say that when someone's coming to campaign to them, they will not say, you came empty-handed. Is it English is it grammar that we're going to eat? We're hungry. When are we going to set aside the hunger? Because there is a weaponizing of poverty one way or the other, Ikechi. I don't know if you agree with me, but this is what I think is happening in this country. That poverty is weaponized to be used against the people. And so it's easy for me to tell you to vote for me because I know you're hungry. And if you see 5,000 naira, you'll be very happy. Or if I give you a bag of rice, you're going to be happy. Or I give you salt or onion, which is almost gold these days. So if we can set aside maybe that hunger for a second, because you will finish eating that rice and the man will still be in power for 4 years. Rice will finish in 2 months. So what do you leave on? You start groaning and moaning. Maybe we need to also balance that mindset of, taking a person for who they are and letting your conscience decide, or whatever the person stands for, decide if you vote for them or not, instead of how much money they give you. Because I think that that's also one of the problems we face, whether we're young or old in this country.
Well, something happened in Edo State, and I think we could learn from that. It seems like a lift from the norm, where the people took the money from both parties and still decided on who they wanted to vote for. Okay, we just want to hope that that's going to be the order of the day, and that is the only way that vote buying can stop. Okay, where the voters know what they want. So that's the starting point. Do the voters know what they want? When we talk about hunger, a lot of us do not know what hunger really is. Okay, we know we are biting hard, but a lot of us don't understand the economics of politics. We don't understand how these things play out, how the vote I cast could add up to placing food on my table tomorrow. A lot of Nigerians don't understand that, which is why voter education is really important, where we get to educate them, okay, in terms of, look, the man you vote in can bring in his vision and enhance security for you at the farm, security at the grassroots level, local security and other, because we do virtually everything for ourselves. At the villages,
I'm sorry I have to stop you, but I think we'll have to come back another day and talk voter education, because it's very important, it's very apt, and we do not have to wait till election, season to start having voter education. It begins now, and it has to be on platforms like this. So I want to thank you so much, Ikechi, for being part of this conversation. I know
Thank
that it
you.
was a struggle at the beginning for us, but hey, we made it. Thank you, everyone who's joined us on Facebook, on Twitter. Keep the conversation going. Go under this video and comment. I want to read your comments. I'll repost them. We need to keep these conversations going. How do we make sure that the same mistakes we made 10 years ago, 20 years ago, do not keep repeating themselves in the future? We keep saying we're the big brother of Africa, but it looks like we are like a sleeping giant of sorts. Ikechi Wogu is an author. He is a social commentator. He's an educationist. He has the people at heart. He's always talking about the negatives in society and trying to play up the positive. Thank you so much, Ikechi, once again for being on the show.
Thank you, Miriam, for having me. Thank you.
All right. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being part of the conversation. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, MIMIEYO. That's Mimi Ayo. Same thing for Instagram. And on Facebook, I'm Mary Angie Kuko. Thank you for being part of the program. I will be back sometime this week where we'll be talking about being safe online. Yes, online safety. A lot of us have so many things open wide and naked online, and that's why sometimes there are hackers in our bank accounts, in our emails. We're going to have an expert on the show on Thursday to give us information on how we can all stay safe online. Once again, I'm Mariana Kohn, live from Lagos, Nigeria. Have a good evening.